I could keep listening to that. That's the Berditchever Nigun sung by our good friend Moshe Storch, a little sketch that we're working on that might get incorporated into our new movie. How's everybody doing? Great to be learning with you on a Saturday night. Let's light up the darkness. Good Vach Shavua Tov, a good week. Who's in the house? Paula in the great Northwest, Bill in mid-Missouri, Paula, beautiful emojis, Sharon in Lebanon, New Jersey, Bella in Florida, Waleed in Pakistan. Welcome, Waleed. Great to have you with us. Okay. People are doing something, huh? Something going on in the news? I don't know. Okay. Tonight's episode of AT Daily is sponsored by our good friend Mark Wolf. Who says, thank you, Sal and Nina, for all that you do. I'd like to dedicate the episode in memory of my father, Samuel Wolf. My dad was born in eastern Poland and was a survivor. Of the many families still in Europe at the start of the war, only he and his cousin survived. At the end of the war, he made his way back to Krinky, which is near Bialystok, to see what was remaining. He and a friend opened a mass grave where the victims of a massacre at Pesach in 1942 were lying. My dad and his friends saw that the bodies were reburied in the Jewish cemetery. He made his way to Paris and through the Jewish agency made his way to Canada, where he lived for 7 years before he could legally immigrate to the States. He was a self-made person, for sure. Mark, may your father's neshama have a great aliyah in the world of souls. We say amen, and may you and all your loved ones be showered in blessings, and thank you for enabling us to share more Torah with more people around the world. Okay, our daf tonight is page 65 here in Tractate Bava Kamma, the 21st volume of the Talmud. We're continuing our discussion of Mishnah number 1 here in chapter 7. We're going to pick it up right at the top of page 65a. Reminder that tomorrow, Sunday, January 7th, no class. I'm going to be at a Chabad fundraiser a little bit out of town, so we'll resume on Monday. Can't make it tomorrow. Okay. Here we go, page 65a. The Gemara returns to the matter itself. And Rav says, when a thief makes his payments, right? Remember that when a thief is caught, right? He stole something and he's caught by the testimony of 2 witnesses, then he's penalized by having to make a twofold, a double payment. Not only restitution of what he stole, but also that value again, right? 200% repayment. If he confesses without having been caught, right? If he makes the atonement and wants to return what he stole, then he doesn't pay the twofold payment. And just to review, and if what he stole was a sheep, and before it's returned, he either slaughters it or sells it, so he no longer has it, then he has to replace the sheep with a 4-fold payment, right? Either 4 sheep or 4 times the value of what the sheep was worth. And if it was an ox, same idea, and it's a 5-fold payment, a heavy penalty indeed. And one thing that really makes sense about that is if somebody steals a sheep, he's probably taking from a person that has more than one sheep, right? I mean, usually they have a flock of sheep. But if you take a person's ox, you might well be taking their sole ox that they use to plow the field. I mean, and you've taken their livelihood from them. And so you can see why the Torah would assign such a severe penalty to that. Okay, so Rav says, when a thief makes his payments, the principal, right, the restitution of what he stole, this is paid according to the value as of the time when he stole it. Whereas the double payment and the fourfold or fivefold payment, those are calculated according to the value at the time of standing trial. The Gemara asks, what is the reason, right? So imagine that you steal somebody's sheep, right? And so at the time that you stole it, it was worth $1,000. But by the time you get caught and, everything gets litigated and settled and you have to pay the penalty, now let's say that the value of sheep has gone up in the world and now they're worth $2,000. Right, so when you have to make a fourfold payment, so you're going to owe $8,000, and that's a big difference than the value of the sheep at the time that it was stolen, when it was $1,000, and your penalty would have been $4,000. So what is the reason? Meaning, what is the source for this ruling of Rav? And the Gemara answers, the verse states, if the theft shall be found in his possession alive. Right, so the Torah adds this word alive. Whether it is an ox or a donkey or a sheep, he shall pay double. Exodus 22:3. So why is the merciful one adding this word alive, chayim, in the context of this theft? And this juxtaposition serves to teach when making payment, revive, achaya, the principle, right? Bring back to life the principle to the value that it had as of the time when he stole it. Right, so what Rav said was in terms of restitution of the original value of what was stolen, we measured at the time that it was stolen. But in terms of the fourfold or fivefold payment or the double payment of a thief who stole not a sheep or an ox, we measure that at the time of the trial. All right, so Rav Sheshes says, the sages don't mince words with each other. Rav Sheshes says, I say that when Rav was sleepy and lying down to rest, he said this halacha. Meaning, what was he, crazy? That's completely wrong. Right? Rav Sheshes meant that this is a careless ruling, as it is contrary to a baraisa. As it is taught in a baraisa, if the animal was stolen when it was lean and the thief fattened it, he pays the double payment and the fourfold or fivefold payment according to the value of the animal as of the time when he stole it. We don't measure at the time of trial. We measure at the time that what its value was at the time that he stole it. And this shows that the double payment and the fourfold or fivefold payment are applied in accordance with the value of the item at the time of the theft, and not its value at the time of trial as claimed by Rav. The sages say in response, this baraisa is not a refutation of Rav's opinion. Right? So Rav Sheshes says, you're bringing this baraisa to refute Rav and say he must have been sleepy when he gave his ruling, but the baraisa that you've brought does not disprove Rav. Why? This baraisa is not a refutation of Rav's opinion because the thief could say to the owner of the animal, I fatten the animal myself. And will you take for yourself the added value from its fattening? In this particular case, Rav would agree that all payments are in accordance with the value of the item at the time of the theft. And what we're getting at is that there's a difference between the value of the animal at the time of trial compared to the value of the animal at the time that it was stolen. Right? We understand that. It went up in value. The question is, why did it go up in value? Did it go up in value because the market changed and the animal was the same exact animal that the time that it was stolen, which was worth $1,000 then, would be worth, let's say, $2,000 a year later? That's the market changed. But if the value of the animal changed because the animal itself changed, in this case because the thief fattened it and actually fed it and made it fatter, or something else happened, or the animal got sick, or the animal grew into an adult. If the animal itself changed, that's going to have a different outcome than if the market changed. And the Gemara asks further, wait a minute. Yeah, so the Gemara asks further, come in here another baraisa that apparently contradicts Rav's ruling. If the animal was stolen when it was fat and the thief caused it to become lean, right? The opposite. Instead of fattening it, he starved it and now it's a leaner animal. So he pays the double payment and the fourfold or fivefold payment according to the value of the animal as of the time when he stole it. And the double and fourfold and fivefold payments are not paid in accordance with the value at the time of the trial as claimed by Rav. And the Gemara answers, there too, there is a reason for this exception, because we say of the thief, what is it to me if he killed the animal entirely, and what is it to me if he killed it partially? By causing the animal to become skinny, the thief is considered to have started the process of killing it. Right? Remember, the fourfold or fivefold payment kicks in if the thief not only steals it, but also slaughters it or sells it so that it leaves his possession. So not feeding it properly is like the beginning of killing it. Consequently, when he ultimately kills the animal, he pays the fourfold or fivefold payment according to its value when he first began to weaken it, meaning at the time of the theft. When Rav says his ruling, he is saying it only with regard to cases of appreciation in value and depreciation in value due to the market fluctuating and not to changes in the animal's physical state. What are the circumstances of the case referred to by Rav? If we say that initially the stolen item was worth 1 dinar, and in the end it was worth 4 dinars, and Rav teaches that the thief pays the principal according to the value of the animal as of the time when he stole it, which is 1 dinar, shall we say that Rav disagrees with a ruling of Rabbah? As Rabbah says, with regard to this one who robbed another of a barrel of wine. If the barrel was initially worth 1 dinar and ultimately it was worth 4 dinars, and after its appreciation, the robber broke the barrel or drank the wine, he pays 4 dinars. If the barrel broke by itself, he pays 1 dinar. And Rabbah holds that even the principal is paid according to the time when he broke the barrel, not necessarily the time of theft. So the sages say in response that Rav agrees with Rabbah with regard to the above case. When Rav says his halacha, his law, he is referring to a case where, for example, the item was initially worth 4 dinars and ultimately was worth 1 dinar. So in this situation, Rav maintains that the thief does not profit from the decrease in the value of the principal. Rather, he pays the principal according to its value at the time when he stole it. And the double payment and the fourfold or fivefold payment are paid according to the value of at the time of standing trial. So Rabbi Hanina teaches a baraisa in support of Rav. In the case of a homeowner who is acting as a bailee, right, a homeowner who has agreed to watch an item for somebody else, and who falsely stated the claim that a thief stole the item that was deposited in his home, and then subsequently he took an oath as to the truth of his claim. So he not only he agreed to watch it, then he took it for himself and claimed that it was stolen from him. Then he took an oath saying that it was stolen from him, and then he regretted that he took an oath before God, telling a lie. And he admitted it of his own volition, not when he was challenged by witnesses, was where we're getting to. Right? And subsequently took an oath as to the truth of his claim, and then he admitted that he was lying and that he in fact took the item himself. And at some point, witnesses came and testified that the bailee himself had the item. If he admitted his guilt before the witnesses came and testified, he pays the principal plus 1/5. Plus 20%. And he must also bring a guilt offering. But if he admitted his guilt after witnesses came and testified, meaning he got caught in the lie, then he pays the double payment and he brings a guilt offering, and his additional 1/5 is covered by his double payment that he pays. This is the statement of Rabbi Yaakov. Now we're still reading this baraisa that we're going to use as a proof. And the rabbis say, and now we're on page 65b, it is written concerning a bailee who falsely claims innocence with regard to a deposit entrusted to him, Leviticus 5:24, he shall restore it according to its principle and shall add its 5th part, the 20%. So this verse teaches that with regard to monetary restitution that is paid precisely according to the principle, one adds 1/5. But for monetary restitution that is not paid precisely according to the principle, as is the case here, where the bailee pays double the principal value, One does not add 1/5. Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai says neither the additional 1/5 nor the guilt offering is paid in a case where there is double payment, and this concludes the Baraisa, right? So if there's double payment, it means he got caught in the lie, and according to at least Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai, in that case, the guilt offering doesn't apply, right? Because he got caught. And it's sort of like when you desecrate Shabbos at a time when the temple is standing. If you do it unwittingly, then you bring a sin offering for desecrating Shabbos. If you do it on purpose, and later you regret that, you're going to make an atonement. There's various kinds of atonement that you can make, but a sin offering doesn't apply. So according to Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai, the guilt offering doesn't apply where he was caught, rather than admitting it of his own volition. At any rate, one thing that they're arguing about is whether, if the double payment applies, do we also add, or is it included, or is it simply not a factor to add this 1/5, right? Which is the case of somebody who admits, or a Baili, who fails in his function as a Baili. And Rabbi Hanina explains, in any event, we learn from this Baraisa that his payment of the additional 1/5 is covered by his double payment, which is the statement of Rabbi Yaakov. What are the circumstances of this case if we say that the stolen item was initially worth 4 dinars and ultimately at the time of trial was still worth 4 dinars? How could he say his payment of the additional 1/5 is covered by his double payment? And this statement is inaccurate in this case, as the double payment, i.e. the penalty included in the double payment, is 4 dinars, and the additional 1/5 is 1 dinar. So when the Torah states fifth, it means 1/5 of the total payment of the 1/5 and the principal together, i.e. 1/4 of the principal. So, in other words, right, if you have to restore something that is worth 4 dinars, and then you're going to have to add 1/5, it's going to be 1/5 of the total. And that's why you're just adding 1 extra dinar. You're going to pay him 5 dinars. You might have thought that the 1/5 is 20% of the 4 dinars, right, which is, what was that, 0.8? But it doesn't work that way. You do 1/5 of the total that you're going to be handing over. 1/5. Right, so rather, is it not referring to a situation where initially it was worth 4 dinars and at the end it was worth 1 dinar? As the penalty component of the double payment is 1 dinar, and the additional 1/5 is also 1 dinar. So apparently the principal, as well as the additional 1/5, is paid according to the value at the time when he stole it. That's what we're really arguing about. Are we going to measure the value of the item that is going to be the subject of restitution and the subject of a double, or if it's a ram or an ox, a 4-fold or 5-fold payment? Are we going to measure its value at the time of the theft or at the time of the litigation? That's the main question we're talking about, and we're using these other examples and other laws to get at that question. Right, so apparently the principal as well as the additional 1/5 is paid according to the value at the time when he stole it, whereas the double payment and the 4-fold or 5-fold payment is according to the value at the time of standing trial. And this is what Rav said. And the Gemara refutes this analysis. No. Rava said, actually, the Baraisa could be referring to a case in which initially it was worth 4 dinars, and now at the time of trial it is also worth 4 dinars. And as for what is difficult with this case, namely that the double payment is 4 dinars and the additional 1/5 is 1 dinar, this problem can be resolved as follows. With what are we dealing here? It is a case where the Baili took an oath that the deposit was stolen from him, and he again took the same oath, and so on 4 times, and after each oath he admitted afterward that he had lied. So there is no 4-fold or 2-fold payment, but there is an additional 5th each time he tells the lie and recants. So Rava continues, the term chamishtav is in the plural, which indicates that, took the oath and so on 4 times, and after each time he admitted afterward that he had lied. And the Torah said he shall add its 5th part, chamishtav, to it. Leviticus 5:24. Right, so the 5th, chamishtav. So Rava continues, the term chamishtav is in the plural, which indicates that the Torah included the possibility of many payments of an additional 1/5 for a single principle. In other words, each time the Bailey takes a false oath, he becomes obligated to pay an additional fifth, despite the fact that each oath concerns the same item. And since he did so 4 times, and the 1/5 is actually 1/4 of the principal, the total amount of payments of the additional 1/5 is equal to the principal, which is the same as the penalty component of the double payment. In other words, we've created circumstances which would result in the same amount of money changing hands, meaning we haven't proven yet whether we're measuring. We all seem to agree that in terms of the restitution of the principal, we measured that as of the time it was stolen, not at the time of litigation. But in terms of measuring the value of the item stolen in order to calculate the twofold payment, which is a penalty, or the 4-fold or 5-fold payment, which are also penalties in the case of sheep and oxen, are we calculating that according to the value of the item stolen at the time it was stolen or at the time of litigation? We haven't settled that yet. So the master said in the Baraisa, and the sages say, he shall restore it according to its principle and shall add its 5th part to it. Leviticus 5:24. And this verse teaches that for monetary restitution that is paid precisely according to the principle, one adds 1/5. But for monetary restitution that is not paid precisely according to the principle, one does not add 1/5. And the Gemara infers he does not add 1/5, but he is obligated to bring a guilt offering. And the Gemara asks, what is different about the additional 1/5 in that case, that he does not have to pay it? As it is written, he shall restore it according to its principle and shall add its 5th part to it. And this indicates that the additional 1/5 is linked to the payment of the precise amount of the principal amount. So, if so, with regard to the guilt offering as well, he should not have to pay, i.e. bring a guilt offering. As it is written, he shall restore it according to its principle and shall add its 5th part to it. And his guilt offering, ve'et ashamo, he shall bring to the Lord. Leviticus 5:24 and 25. So the verse links the guilt offering to the payment of the precise amount of the principal, just like it does for the additional 1/5. So the Gemara answers, the sages would say to you in response, the superfluous word et in the phrase, and his guilt offering, ve'et ashamo, right? And et is always that connecting word that doesn't have its own meaning. It just connects, the verb to the object. And ashamo, right? Asham is a guilt offering. Ashamo is his guilt offering. Divides the verse. So therefore, only the additional 1/5 payment, but not the guilt offering, is linked to the payment of the precise amount of the principal. So the Gemara asks, and Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai, who maintains that this Bailey is exempt from a guilt offering as well, how would he respond to the sage's argument concerning et? He would point out that the term in question is not et, but ve'et, consisting of the word et preceded by the letter vav, which means and. So the conjunction joins the clauses of the verse. Therefore, both the additional 1/5 payment and the guilt offering are linked to the payment of the precise amount of the principal. And therefore, if you're excused from one, you're excused from the other. And the rabbis would respond to Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai's claim and say to you, if the Torah had intended that the two issues should be joined together, let the merciful one write neither the vav nor the et. And Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai could have said to you in response to this argument, it is not possible for the verse to have not written et, as this term is necessary to separate between property belonging to the Most High, meaning the guilt offering, and non-sacred property, i.e. that of the Jew. So therefore, as the verse had to use et to indicate this difference, the vav comes and joins the clauses of the verse. The Gemara now discusses other cases in which an object undergoes a change after it has been stolen. So Rabbi Ilya says, if one stole a lamb and it subsequently became a ram, or if he stole a calf and it subsequently became a bull, right? So now we're getting back to that there's a difference in value between what was stolen at the time that he stole it, and let's say what is going to be recovered later, right? When either he gets caught or he comes forward to make restitution, or it's found out that he slaughtered it or sold it. At any rate, what he stole was a lamb, and then later on he has a ram, which of course is worth much more than the lamb. So what are we going to do with this? This is different than he fattened it, and this is different than the market value changed of the same exact animal. Here, the value changed because it matured and stopped being a little lamb and started being a big sheep. So what happens? So if one stole a lamb and it subsequently became a ram, or if he stole a calf and it subsequently became a bull, the stolen item has undergone a change while in the thief's possession. And he has therefore, for the purposes of these calculations, acquired it as his own property. He's not off the hook. It's not like he kept something stolen long enough that it became his. That's not what we're saying. We're talking about that the thing, while it was in his property, became something different, right? So what he stole essentially no longer exists. So consequently, his obligation of restitution consists of monetary payment rather than giving back the stolen item itself. So if he subsequently slaughtered or sold the animal, it is in effect his own animal that he slaughters, or it is his own animal that he sells. And he's not obligated in the fourfold or fivefold payment of a ram. He might be obligated in the fourfold or fivefold payment of a lamb, right? So Rabbi Hanina raised an objection to Rabbi Ilya from a Baraisa. If one stole a lamb and it subsequently became a ram, or if he stole a calf and it subsequently became a bull, he pays the double payment and the fourfold payment or fivefold payment according to the animal's value as of the time he stole it, right? So he has to pay 4 lambs for a lamb or 5 calves for a calf, but not the value of the whole sheep that's become while in his possession. And if it enters your mind that in a case of this kind, the thief has acquired the animal as his own property by virtue of the physical change that the animal underwent when it matured, why does he pay the fourfold or fivefold payment? After all, it is his own animal that he slaughters, or it is his own animal that he sells. And Rabbi Ilya said to him, rather, what would you conclude from the Baraisa? That this physical change in the stolen animal does not serve to acquire it for the thief and render it his property? If so, why should he pay according to the animal's value as of the time when he stole it? Let him pay according to the animal's value now, i.e., at the time of the slaughter or sale, right? This guy might have stolen a lamb that was worth $100, and then he, held on to it and fed it, and eventually became a ram, which is, worth 10 times as much, right? And then he slaughters it. So somebody lost a lamb that was worth $100, and now he's going to receive in payment the fourfold payment of a full ram, which is $4,000. That would be quite a windfall for the owner of the lamb. So it sounds like we're not going to do that. So Rabbi Hanina said to him, this is the reason that he does not pay in accordance with the animal's value now. It is because the thief can say to the animal's owner, did I steal a bull from you? Or did I steal a ram from you? No, I stole only a calf or a lamb, and therefore I will pay you the value of the animal when I stole it. So Rabbi Ilya said to Rabbi Hanina, may the merciful one save us from this opinion of yours. And Rabbi Hanina said back to him, on the contrary, may the merciful one save us from your opinion. Right? So these questions of justice get a little bit tricky here. After all, the guy who owned a lamb can say, hey, I didn't do anything wrong. I owned a lamb. I was expecting that I would, keep feeding my lamb that my kids were very fond of. It was like becoming a member of our household. And eventually it would become a sheep, and then we would shear its wool, etc. You stole it from us, and you took away that opportunity, and we weren't able to replace the lamb because there were no more lambs available during all this period while it was becoming a ram. So yeah, you owe us a ram, and yeah, because you stole it and slaughtered it, you owe us the fourfold payment on a ram. Why shouldn't you? And what would be a societal, policy-based argument against that? Answer, we want thieves to make atonement. We want thieves to make tshuva, right? So if they're going to, first of all, if they come forward, they don't have to make a fourfold or fivefold payment. So that this is actually not the right argument. Right? This is, well, even in the case, let's say that he slaughtered it and sold it, right? So he's not, so the fourfold or fivefold payment would apply, but we still want him to confess. We still want him to feel bad about it and come forward, right? So if what he has to replace is 4 lambs, so he can do it. right? But if what he has to replace is 4 sheep, it now becomes so onerous that he won't do it, right? So at a certain point, you don't want, just because, of course we favor the victim in a case of theft, and we want, our heart goes out to him, and how much do we really care about the thief? But we do want to create a situation where it's not going to be overly difficult for a thief to come forward and admit what he did, right? So that's that other side of the argument. So Rabbi Zera objects to this. But even if an animal's natural growth is not considered a physical change, let the thief acquire it through its change in name, i.e., its change of classification, as the animal that was originally called a calf or a lamb, and now it's called a bull or a ram. It's just not the same, item, right? Because the language of it has changed, because the lamb is now called a ram. We're just talking about something different before the law. Rava says, there is in fact no change in name here, right? We're not saying that this was transmogrified, from a lamb into a lion, right? It's not that kind of a change. It just grew older. And in fact, even baby sheep are called sheep. Maybe we have a word like lamb, but in fact, baby sheep are sheep. Right? So Rava says there is in fact no change in the name here, as even a day-old bull is called a bull, and even a day-old ram is called a ram. A day-old bull is called a bull, as it is written, when a bull or a sheep or a goat is born. Right? So that's Leviticus 22:27. We don't say when a lamb is born, we say when a sheep is born. A day-old ram is called a ram, as can be derived from Jacob's statement to Lavan, as it is written, and the rams of your flock I have not eaten, Genesis 31:38. Now, did Jacob mean that he did not eat any of Lavan's rams, but younger lambs he did eat? This is certainly not the meaning of this verse, as this would mean he was a thief. Rather, must one not conclude from this verse that a day-old ram is called a ram? So in any case, the Baraisa cited earlier by Rabbi Hanina is difficult for the opinion of Rabbi Ilya, as it states that the thief must pay the 4-fold or 5-fold payment, despite the fact that the slaughter or sale of the animal took place after it matured from a calf to a bull or from a lamb to a ram. So to resolve the difficulty, Rav Sheshes said, in accordance with whose opinion is this Baraisa? It is in accordance with the opinion of Beis Shammai, who say an item, even if it has undergone a physical change, remains in its place, i.e. a stolen item remains in the possession of its owner, and a thief does not acquire it, even if it undergoes a change. As it is taught in a Baraisa, if one gave wheat to a prostitute for her as payment, i.e. the hire of her services, and she made the wheat into flour, or if he gave her olives and she made them into olive oil, or if he gave her grapes and she made them into wine, it is taught in one Baraisa that it is prohibited to bring these products as an offering into the holy temple. In accordance with the verse, Deuteronomy 23:19, you shall not bring the hire of a harlot into the house of the Lord your God for any vow. And it is taught in one Baraisa that these products are permitted, as the physical change from wheat to flour, or from olive to oil, or from grapes to wine, means that it has undergone a transformation and it is no longer what was used to pay the prostitute for her wages. And Rav Yosef says that Gurion of Asporach teaches in a Baraisa that Beis Shammai prohibit these products and Beis Hillel permit them. So if so, these two Baraisas that we've been talking about reflect a dispute between Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel, right? So if Beis Shammai say, well, you paid her with wheat and then she turned it into flour, now Beis Hillel would say, okay, well, that flour can be used to bring an offering in the holy temple. And Beis Shammai say, no, that flour cannot be used because originally the wheat that turned into the flour was used to pay a prostitute. And you can't use something that was used to pay a prostitute in any way, shape, or form in the temple. Beis Hillel would say, maybe the wheat was used to pay a prostitute, but when it became flour, it became a new entity. So the Gemara clarifies the source of these two opinions. What is the reason of Beis Shammai for prohibiting these products? As it is written, you shall not bring the hire of a harlot or the price of a dog into the house of the Lord your God for any vow. For even both of these are abominations to the Lord your God. Deuteronomy 23:19. So the apparently superfluous word even serves to include their changed status. And Beis Hillel, who permit these items after they have undergone a physical change, maintain that the term these in the phrase both of these teaches that this prohibition applies only to the original items, but not to their changed form. And Beis Shammai would reply, that term, these, comes to teach that this law applies only to the animals given as payment to the prostitute, but not to their offspring. And the Gemara asks, okay, so then what do Beis Hillel derive from, or how do Beis Hillel derive that same law? Well, Beis Hillel would say that one should conclude two conclusions from the term these. These items are disqualified, but not when they are in their changed form, and these are disqualified, but not their offspring. And the Gemara asks, well, then according to the opinion of Beis Hillel, isn't it written even? Since Beis Hillel reject the law that Beis Shammai derived from this term, what do they learn from the word even? And the Gemara states, indeed, the word even is difficult, according to the opinion of Beis Hillel. In any event, they disagree only with regard to this particular issue. One sage, Beis Hillel, holds that a physical change in a stolen item causes the thief to acquire it, and the other sage, Beis Shammai, holds that a physical change in a stolen item does not cause the thief to acquire it. But with regard to the payment of the thief, everyone agrees that he pays according to the initial value of the item at the time of the theft. As it teaches in the Baraisa cited above, he pays the double payment and the fourfold or fivefold payment according to the animal's value as of when? As of the time he stole it. I'm very close to done. If you have a question or comment, please get it in. So the Gemara suggests, and we are on page 66a near the top, shall we say that this Baraisa constitutes a conclusive refutation of the opinion of Rav? Right? Rav says we measure the principle for the purposes of restitution at the time of the theft, but we measure for the purposes of the twofold or fourfold or fivefold penalty payment, we measure the value of the item that was stolen at the time of the restitution, at the time of the trial, in other words. So, as Rav says, when the thief makes his payments, he pays the principal according to the value as of the time when he stole it, whereas the double payment and the fourfold or fivefold payment are calculated according to the value at the time of standing trial. So have we refuted that? Rav has said in resolution of this difficulty, if one stole lambs that subsequently become rams or were fattened, he pays the double payment and the fourfold or fivefold payment according to the initial state of the animal as claimed by both Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel. If there was a change in the animal's value due to fluctuation of the monetary value of animals, that the market changed, then he pays according to the animal's worth now at the time of standing trial, because that's when the replacement is going to happen. That's what we've got for us tonight. Let me check some questions or comments. And a reminder, no class tomorrow because I'm going to be out of town, and we'll resume on Monday at the regular time, 6 p.m. Pacific. Okay, questions on Bava Kamma 65. Give me a second, just waiting for the Google Doc to reload. Bill, I know you are, but what am I? The sages said to one another, apparently. I know this is all very serious, but also that scene was hilarious, right? Where Rav Sheshes was accusing Rav of being sleepy when he issued the ruling. Bell, when someone has stolen something, when someone has stolen something, I would believe that repentance would come shortly after the theft. But the longer that the thief holds on to the item, and especially if the thief continues to hold and perhaps adds value to the item, as in feeding the animal, then the thief would start to consider that his claim to ownership is real, and he'll be less likely to repent for the theft. Also, the victim may have lost out on the yearly use of the item, in the case of the lamb, the yearly shearing of the wool. Exactly, right? So we have this idea that the longer he holds on to it, the more it becomes my precious, right? And maybe the less likely is to come forward. But, we also don't know what changing circumstances are happening in his life. Maybe he's one of those very fortunate souls who commits a big transgression and then things start to go badly in his life. And I say fortunate because it forces him to make a cheshbon nefesh, right? An examining of his soul. And he says, you know what? This is happening to me because I stole. I need to make amends. right? And so now, let's say he was never caught, witnesses never came forward, but a lot of time has passed by. Okay, we want him to come forward. We want to create a situation where he can come forward. And, if he still has the animal, then the fourfold or fivefold payment won't apply. But this valuation question is what we're dealing with. And finally, Sharon says, off topic, my husband and I were at Chabad near us this Shabbos, and the rabbi there knows the Chabad rabbi who did my brother-in-law's funeral. And it sounds like he was originally from your neck of the woods. His name is Meish Schwartz. I love Meish. Absolutely. His father, Schwartzy, was a very, very dear friend of ours. Like a huge influence in my life, who really died way too young. We miss him so much. Schwartzy was the best. And I seem to remember you mentioned that name before. Am I right about that? Yes, exactly, Sharon. Schwartzy was a really, really dear friend of ours. I learned with him many times. When we first reconnected with Judaism, going to Shabbos dinners at Schwartzy's house, he and his wife Olivia hosting Shabbos for 60 strangers. It was called Dinner for 60 Strangers. And everybody was not a stranger at all, because as soon as you came into the warm embrace of their home, it was just so much like coming home. So we miss him dearly. And if you see Meish again, please give him a big hug and all my love. It's funny, I was once, I'll just finish with this. I was in Israel. I think, was it the last time I was in Israel or the time before? I was just having a great spiritual experience in Jerusalem. And I remember thinking to myself, this visit to Jerusalem has been amazing. It's been so uplifting. I learned something wonderful, and I met some new wonderful people, and I had a beautiful Shabbos dinner, and I had a very moving experience at the Kotel, at the Western Wall. And the only thing that's missing is to just randomly run into somebody, here in Jerusalem, because that always happens. You always run into people that you know from your life somewhere else. And I had that thought, looked up, and there was Meish Schwartz walking down, that ramp toward the Western Wall, and we had a big hug. So yeah, I know him well. All the best, my holy sisters and brothers. Have a wonderful week. Good Vach, a Shavua Tov. No class tomorrow, and look forward to learning with you again on Monday at 6 p.m. Pacific. All the best.